Hey guys, Mr Fraser here from Neon Maths, bright future. In this session we're going to look at how we factorise a quadratic. This is going to be the first of two videos that I do, and in this session we're going to be looking at how we factorise slightly easier quadratics. Remember, we can recognise a quadratic because the highest power is a 2, but how do we go about factorising it? Stay tuned to find out.
Push it all the way to the max, wherein the pencil's gotta learn. When you can't think, mine is on fire. Mass fighter, now it's warrior time, so get preparing. Gladiator, mass is the armor that you're wearing.
We're going to start off by recapping the general form of a quadratic equation. So how do I go about factorising a quadratic expression? Well, before we get started into this, we've got to determine what factorising is. And in order to do that, we're going to go backwards a little bit. Now, going from this to this is a process that we call expanding. If we're asked to expand the brackets, we multiply everything in the first bracket by everything in the last bracket. There are lots of different ways of doing this. If you're not sure about how to go from there to there, it'd be a good idea to go back and to have a look at my expanding double brackets video. Well, that process over there is called expanding. The opposite, when we're going the other way to get from here to here, that process is called factorising. Right, so we know how to expand. This session we're going to be looking at how we factorise equation. When I think of factorising, I often think, how do we put the brackets in? We're looking for factors, that's a key word, factorising factors. Well, let's have a look at an example. How do we go about factorising a quadratic expression? Let's try and do some. Let's have a go at 3 questions that are going to get slightly harder each time, and have a good look at some practical examples of factorising quadratic expressions. In all of these questions that I do now, the coefficient of x squared is going to be 1. I'm not going to write a number before x squared, and that means that it's 1x squared. If you want to know how to do it where a is bigger than 1, have a look at my next factorising quadratics, which will look at some slightly more difficult examples. So, how do I go about factorising it? Well, I know that it's going to go into a pair of brackets, double brackets like that. Now I just need to think about the properties. Remember what happened when we were expanding brackets. Thinking about that helps us a lot with this, because we know that when we multiply our first 2 terms together, we get x squared. So, it has to be x. X multiplied by x equals x squared. I also know that when I multiply my last numbers together, I get 12. So what numbers multiply together to give you 12? 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Can't think of any others. So I'm looking at those pairs of factors, and I know that one combination of these are going to go in here. Now, how do I know which one? Well, I pick the pair that I can either add or subtract together to get 7. So, can I make 7 out of 1 and 12? No, if I add them together, I can make 13. If I subtract one from the other, I could make 11 or negative 11. Can I make 7 from 2 and 6? No, but I can make 7 from 3 and 4. So I know that in one of my brackets I've got a 3, and in my other bracket I've got a 4. Now I need to think about the signs, and this is quite an easy one. The next one's going to be a little bit more difficult. But remember, when we're expanding these brackets, we're multiplying everything by everything. So we multiply x by x to get x squared. We're multiplying 4 by x to get 4x, and we've got 3x, and we've got 12. We need to make the 7x, and the way we do that is with positives. Okay, if I think about expanding this, I'm going to get 4x when I multiply the outside ones together, 3x when I get the insides together, and I need to do 4x plus 3x to get 7x. We're going to have a look at a slightly more difficult example where we need to think about negatives. One thing to keep in mind, look at the last number. Okay, is it positive or negative? Remember the negative number ninja. If you haven't had a look at that, I suggest going to have a look at that video. If we multiply a positive with another positive, we get a positive solution. If we get a negative with a negative, we get a positive solution. So because this is positive, I know that these either both have to be positives or both have to be negatives. If it was negative, then I know one would be positive and one would be negative, and then it would be a case of asking or checking which way around it is. Let's have a look at an example like that. Let's make it a little bit more difficult. So let's have a look at how we go about factorising this. Well, again, it's a quadratic. I know it's quadratic because the highest power is 2. The coefficient of x squared is 1, so I can go straight to putting my double brackets in. When I multiply my first terms together, I get x squared, so I know they both should be x. When I multiply my last together, they need to multiply to 20. So think of my factors of 20. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. There aren't any more. Now I need to consider which pair of factors can I manipulate by either adding or subtracting to get negative 9. Well, 4 and 5, I can get negative 9 with 4 and 5. Looking at my last term, it's a positive. Remember, just like I spoke about now, because it's positive, these are either both positive or both negative. Because when they're the same, we get a positive solution. If the signs are different and we multiply them together, we get a negative solution. So they need to make negative 9. Okay, well, how do I get, if I think about multiplying this out, I get 5x and 4x. Well, it needs to be negative 5x, take away 4 more x to get negative 9x. Let's quickly check that. X squared minus 5x minus 4x minus 5x minus 4x. I'm starting at minus 5x. I'm taking 4 more x away. I get to negative 9x. And I multiply my last together. Negative times a negative equals a positive. So that's perfect. Let's do one more question, just slightly more difficult. How do we factorise this? Well, it's quadratic. Coefficient of x squared is 1. Go straight to putting our brackets in. These two multiply together to give you that, so they're both x. These multiply together to give you that. I need my factors of 18. Right, and now I need to think about how I make this number over here. Which combination of these can I either add or subtract from each other to get 3? Well, 6 and 3. I can get 3 by doing 6, take away 3. Now have a look at my last number here, my constant. It's a negative value, so I know that the signs here must be different. Remember, a negative times a positive equals a negative, or a positive times a negative equals a negative. So the signs have to be different. I need to make plus 3. So I want to do plus 6 minus 3. Let me quickly check it. First, x squared. My outers is negative 3x. My inners is plus 3x. Starting at negative 3x, if I add 6x, I get to plus 3x. Perfect. And when I multiply my lasts together, 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. That's it. So thanks for having a look at this video on factorising quadratics. These are the simple ones. I've got another video which looks at factorising more complicated quadratics, basically when a is another number other than 1. So please have a look at that. Subscribe to my channel. Comment below.